Hello and welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Audacious Path Show. This is Reverend Andrea Scott Brown, and I have the pleasure of being joined today with Angela Lee. And she and I are going to have a conversation. And what a great day to do that, because it's any day.
So true.
And so I would love for you to please give us a quick introduction of who you are and our conversation today. We've decided we're going to be talking about feelings, and
Okay.
sometimes this is a difficult conversation. Sometimes people try to avoid them and and go around them and stuff them, and yeah, so this is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun conversation, and I think everyone will get a lot out of it. So first, Angela, tell us who you are.
Well, I'm Angela Lee, and I write fairy tales. And I talk about um, feeling your feelings, accepting your feelings, and feelings in general has been a topic for me of late.
Awesome. And through your books, where you focus on ages 8 to
8 to
15,
12.
8 to 12,
Yeah.
what a great time where all of the feelings are coming up. And parents have a hard time sometimes talking about that, having the conversations necessary to, or even to allow them, because they can be tumultuous, they can be
It can. And
unnerving.
we weren't taught how to process our own emotions. So how can we teach our kids that? It's when I was a child, little girls are supposed to be happy and sweet and nice. So I learned rage, anger, totally not acceptable. Little boys can't cry. Little boys can't show feeling. That's the world I grew up in. And these people who grew up in that world are are the parents and grandparents now.
Right.
And so that whole social conditioning needs to be deconstructed. And we, instead of saying don't cry, we should be saying, okay, you're crying, and tell me what you're feeling. Tell me where you're feeling it. Tell me what it's about, and have that conversation of discovery with the child so that the feeling can then dissipate and be processed.
Right. And so feelings need space, right?
They need space. Yeah,
Feelings need space. All feelings need space.
exactly. And I learned to give space to my positive feelings, and I ignored. I would say, I never get mad, which was not true. It was just me suppressing that. And um, it's my mission to let kids know that anger and rage are emotions, and all emotions are acceptable. There's a reason behind them. And when we resist and suppress an emotion, it's like we put a rock in our backpack,
Mm.
and then we carry that backpack around. And one day there's so many rocks that the backpack splits open and the rocks fall out. And that's when we have, an explosion basically of that emotion that we've been carrying around with us. But that doesn't end there, because we put those back in the backpack and we keep moving because we suppress it again. And
Waiting for that
so,
next time that it splits open.
exactly. And it does split open.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, the thing that I've learned is when we feel our feelings, we acknowledge our feelings so we can name them. We can identify where we're feeling. A lot of my bad feelings I feel in my stomach. And so I can identify where I'm feeling that feeling. And that's acknowledging the feeling and then accepting. And it's not accepting what happened, it's accepting that you have this feeling. And there's a reason you have this feeling. Then the next key for me is not identifying with the feeling. And it's easiest to talk about this in terms of grief.
Mm.
Grief is a really hard feeling, and many people avoid, try, and suppress their grief. I shouldn't be this sad, and so they suppress it. Um, but some people hold tight to it and they make it their identity. I am a widow and I am sad. My life was ruined when my husband died. And that grasping onto a feeling and holding it as an identity is as detrimental to experiencing the fullness of life as suppressing the feeling. So it's kind of this fine line we walk where we're expressing without attaching to it.
Right. One of the things that you talked about early on. So let's talk to the parents. Let's talk to the parents of children who, as a parent, I didn't always have a great model for how to express emotion, how to give space to it, as we talked about before. Like, how do we give space to it? And you mentioned the example of someone is crying and acknowledging that they're crying and that it's okay. And I love this idea of allowing that space, allowing that time to just feel the emotion. And sometimes it's not right at the immediate noticing, like, okay, so for me, I have seen one of my children crying, and immediately I want to go to what's wrong, what's happening, what's going on, and yes, and let's make it all right. Let's make it okay. And
Because we're moms, and that's how we approach it. I
right,
just want you to have a good life, and I want to make it better for you.
right. And what I now know, what I recognize now is that, let's say it's my daughter, she needs space for the expression of the feeling of whatever's going on. And so starting to ask those questions immediately isn't always helpful. And just
It's
allowing her the
true.
time.
Sometimes just holding the child and letting them express to you what is going on without you asking. So you're just there providing the space.
Right.
And sometimes emotions come out at really inconvenient times. You're having a dinner party and your child's going to have a meltdown. Um, the thing is, because we were never taught any of this stuff in our own childhood, we didn't learn to truly measure what's important. And in the context of life, a dinner party doesn't matter. Your child does.
Right.
And so just prioritizing and saying, okay, my kid's having a meltdown. I need to take the 10, 15 minutes to spend this time with my child so that my child can process this emotion.
Right.
And if the kitchen doesn't get cleaned, if the dinner table isn't perfectly laid out, it's not a big deal.
Right.
And I didn't know that. I didn't do that. I wish I did. But now I know. So I'm trying to help other parents know.
Right. And the other thing, in the example with my daughter, sometimes emotion will build up with her because we don't always have the voice. We don't always have the skill to discern where it's coming from. And it'll come out because maybe it has been built up about little tiny things throughout a period of
That's the
time.
backpack spilling over.
Right. And because and so I will be with her and I will hold her, and my daughter now is 20 and it still sometimes happens.
Well,
And
yeah,
so
so
but what I wanted to say about that is that I allow her that space, and when she's able to pause and have a conversation about it, she can't often identify, like, it's not any one thing. It's just this like release that she allows for herself.
because it's so many things
Right.
piled on and
Right.
carried. And that's why suppression of emotion is so detrimental
Right.
to us. And I was the queen of suppressing rage.
Mhm.
And I still haven't gotten it all out. But um, that's why it's so important to teach kids that every emotion needs to be felt. And it's the the closer you can to feeling it when it arrives, as opposed to delaying it for later, the better. Sometimes it's not convenient, but in the reality of life, it's always the right time.
And it certainly is easier, right? Like you feel it and you let it go. That's so
Done.
much easier because it's harder to actually suppress it.
Oh, yes. What we all know the saying, what you resist persists.
Persists, for sure.
Suppressing emotions is resistance.
Yes.
And that's why I have that backpack analogy because it makes so much sense. You know, that backpack can only carry so much, just like our emotions. We can only suppress so much until it explodes out of us. And that passive aggressive kind of suppress, explode is n- not good for the person or
Right.
the people around.
What
And yeah.
it's some advice that I got a long time ago from a friend who said I was going through a big emotional change in my life, and understanding my own experience with it. And it's like for example, you talked about grief, and that can be an overwhelming thing over a
Mhm.
longer period of time. And so the recommendation for that I received was give yourself time to feel all the feelings outside of maybe day-to-day operations. So rather than having it be all consuming all the time, all day long, give yourself a set time to actually feel all the feelings, and in a safe environment, in a time where it's not going to be disruptive. And this isn't always if you can feel it in the moment and release it, that's
That's
number
the
one, that's the
best.
best.
And sometimes it's not possible.
Right,
You
sometimes it's not appropriate, or
you
or
think
what.
of a kid in a situation where they're being abused.
Mm,
They don't have room for expressing their emotions,
right.
and their suppression of the emotions is very detrimental to them. And so, someone in the kid's life, whether it be a teacher, whether it be a counselor, or whoever in the kid's life, giving them that space, giving them a pillow, allowing them to scream into the pillow, punch the pillow, take all your aggressions out on a pillow. And it's a healthy way of processing rage.
It
And
certainly is, yes.
rage is something that happens when injustice happens. And it's not fear based. I did a Facebook post. Do you allow rage or do you suppress it? And I got some really interesting answers, including one person who said, well, ever since I released fear from my life. I don't rage. And the equivalence of rage with fear is not necessarily true, because there's rage about unfairness that is a very strong thing. That's all of my rage from my youth is about the unfairness of what happened to me when I was a kid.
Mm.
And it has nothing to do with fear. So, um, giving a child the room to express that feeling of helplessness and rage is so important.
Yeah, right. And the tools, like a pillow. A pillow can be a tool.
A pillow is a tool. Breath
And
work is a
right.
tool.
And what a much more um safe and way to release. If you're in a place where the backpack breaks and
Or
there's
before then.
right, or before then, and there's the emotion shows up and it becomes a fight, a physical fight, or even punching a wall. That is not a pillow. those those are not helpful.
Well,
um
when you express, let's talk about rage because it's such a strong emotion. When you express rage in a way that is damaging to yourself, others, or property, there are consequences to that.
right.
When you express rage into a pillow, there are no consequences.
You might rip the pillow apart, but you can replace the pillow.
But yeah, we could buy a new pillow. And I'd be okay with that if my kid did that, because
Exactly.
I would want my child to release that energy and not carry it around for the rest of their life.
Right. And sometimes I've heard people feel like, well, but more is just going to come. Yes, maybe.
Sometimes when, you know, my childhood, I had an abusive alcoholic father. My house burned down. I was sent to foster care. These are not things that are easy for a child to experience. And this all happened by the time I was 5. So that creates more than one rock in the backpack. and and sometimes screaming into a pillow, it will release one of the rocks. So yeah, you might have to do it time and again, but every time you do release some of that energy, there is an opening within you that allows you to be more of you.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. It reminds me of, I talk with clients all the time about going through something rather than going around it or stuffing it, or um, going through it is so much faster and quicker and easier. It can be painful. It can be acute.
Mhm.
There's a break on the other side. There's
Yeah,
release on the other side.
there's release. And that's the thing. We avoid, in our society, we avoid painful emotions: grief, anger, rage, pain, fear. These are things that we will suppress and avoid. And in doing that, we cause more harm to ourselves than if we just feel them.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that today. Tough topic, tough, um, and so important. So
Yeah.
important.
And this is, I this is what I write about. This is what I put into my books. I'm I'm truly trying to open our society to feel.
Hmm. Thank you for that. Thank you for your gifts. Thank you
Mm.
for your insights and the work that you've done to allow others to learn from you. And maybe the lesson is a better way to deal with these big feelings and
Yeah.
emotions. Yeah.
Yeah. The bottom line is feel everything, and
The good
your
and the
life
bad, right? The
your
good.
life will be better for it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. This
Oh,
is
thank
the
you.
Oh, this is such a great time. This is the Audacious Path Show. I'm Reverend Andrea Scott Brown from audaciouspath.com. Thank you. And I look forward to you joining another episode soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.